Hey guys, and welcome to season 1, episode 12 of Quantifiably Bitchy. I am your host, Raquella, and today we're going to be discussing season 1, episode 12, Relevés. So the title of this episode is interesting because it is not a food term. Relevé is a ballet term and it means raised, and it's a fundamental ballet move where the ballet dancer goes from like the flat of their feet and raises to their toes from the balls of their feet, is my understanding, which I think is fun because we are at the penultimate episode here this week, you guys. So it is right before the finale. Hannibal and Will are kind of doing this dance and scrambling to find out who the Ripper is from Will, and on Hannibal's side, covering his tracks so he does not get caught as the Ripper and continues and is, able to continue to play with his friends every day. So super excited to delve into it. I watched it last night and I was like, this is a really good episode. I can't wait to talk about it. So that's always a good sign. I get excited. Before we get started, let's go over our usual housekeeping items. Make sure you follow me everywhere. I am Quantifiably Bitchy without the I. Right now, I'm the most active on Tumblr and maybe second place TikTok, but definitely follow me everywhere. My link tree is in all of my bios, but I am Quantifiably Bitchy without that I. If you want to find me, like, comment, and subscribe on this video. We have almost reached a year of Quantifiably Bitchy. We may have reached a year at this point, if I'm being honest. I'm like terrible at times, but it's fine. So happy to have you here. 1 year anniversary of Quantifiably Bitchy coming up. It's been a treat. I'm going to keep going for seasons 2 and 3 as long as my stamina can keep up with it. It has been a great journey, just kind of teaching myself how to edit and talk in front of a camera. And it's been fun to see all of the episodes just kind of grow and change. It doesn't look like it did necessarily from episode 1. So I'm excited to see where this continues to go. It's been a really great side project of mine. I am a big believer that joy is radical and creating art is radical, especially, now that we are just kind of dealing with the trappings of a fascist regime. So my advice to you all is, if you're struggling with what's going on in the world right now and you are capable and, able to do so, make art, make bad art. I write fan fiction. I, make this podcast. I cross stitch. The point is that I'm creating, and I do think that having any sort of joy or whimsy right now is radical. And if that's the part that you play in all of this, it's super important. So keep making art, keep writing smut. Remember, all of this is the resistance. So if you're like me and you're ever feeling down, just start making shit, because depression can't catch a moving target. So that's my advice to you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. If you've made it through all of these episodes, I love you and you're my heroes. And I'm just really happy to have you here. This has been such a fun journey and it's been so fun to continue it with you guys. So like I said, follow me everywhere. Quantifiably Bitchy without that I. My name is Raquella, and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we learned last episode that Will has been hospitalized for his fever. Encephalitis is not mentioned, just fever. And opening shot, what do we got to see? What are we learning? What are our first impressions? You know the drill by now. What is that first shot, that first scene telling us? And it is Will in this adorable little like tartan plaid robe with his saline bag in the hospital, wheeling his way in the dark because we don't really like lights at the FBI. I'm assuming this is like some type of FBI hospital. He goes into this dark room and there is this chamber, this like space age looking chamber. And we see Georgia Machin looking very healed, looking very healthy in this oxygen chamber. And she is the only thing illuminated in this room. She is the focus of Will's thoughts right now. And we have this really sweet interaction between the two of them. And I always love seeing these loving moments from Will. He's just so cute and so loving. And she's like, do I look alive? And he's like, you look pretty. And it's just, for someone who's probably gone most of her life not being told she's pretty, not necessarily being told she's ugly, but her whole focus has been just her mental health. So for him to just be like, you look pretty.
You look pretty.
Really, I just think, it feels good. It always feels good to receive a compliment. And Will Graham is attractive. So they have this very meaningful conversation. And I think that Will relates to her in a way where he feels undiagnosable. No matter what they tell you, oh, this is what's wrong with you. You have a fever. it's not really what's happening. Like, you're always just going to be led on by these doctors. Georgia's really insightful, I think, without realizing it, because Will is being manipulated by a doctor. He's being manipulated by Dr. Lecter and being told that he has one thing when he has another. So I think it's really insightful being like, they're going to tell you it's okay, but you might still be sick. And like, they tell me, oh, I'll heal, but chances are I'll just get sick again like I always do. Like, she has no faith in the system because it has failed her thus far, because it's so hard to treat mental illness because there is no like pinpointing factor or like blood test that can prove it. She's like, I hope you have good insurance, because you know, you're going to be getting a lot of tests run on you, because they're never going to find out what's wrong with you. We find out that she's getting shock therapy, hopefully to potentially forget or remember what happened to her. And she doesn't want to remember, she says. But if she remembers, then she might remember that Hannibal killed Dr. Sutcliffe. And Will's like, you know what you did. And she's like, but I don't remember it. This is fun because Will has memory problems and he loses time. And it feels like a horrible dream where she killed her friend. And like, I think Will, he can relate to this like dreamlike state of hallucination. And Georgia says, I dreamed you killed that doctor, but I couldn't see your face. But I thought it was you. Did you kill, like, everyone's like, did you kill that doctor? And you can see that worries Will, because he's like, did I kill the doctor? Do I not remember? And then we kind of fade into this next scene. Will in his hospital bed, just laying horizontal, and Hannibal bringing him soup, bringing him chicken soup, fancy Hannibal chicken soup. But it's this very loving gesture. And allegedly, I've heard from other Hannibals, I have not fact checked this, but I have heard that some of these spices in the soup actually are detrimental to the encephalitis that Will has. So while it seems like a kind gesture, it has a very like Hannibal motive behind it. We see them enjoying a nice little soup lunch at their hospital together. And Hannibal's like, oh, you've been wandering the hospital again. And Will's like, relax. I knew that I was awake and I was doing it on purpose to go visit Georgia. Hannibal says there's nothing more isolating than mental illness. He is building the blocks for Will to still feel crazy at this point, and also for people to not believe him and treat him as an unreliable person because he is mentally unstable. So these always feel like reassuring words, and like the soup, it feels reassuring, but there is something darker behind it. Look at these cuties enjoying soup together, little hospital date. And Will asks Hannibal, he's like, the loss of time, the sleepwalking, all the nonsense, could it really just been because of my fever? And Hannibal diagnoses him very interestingly. He's like, fevers can be a symptom of dementia, Will. Again, stripping away his credibility, stripping away his believability, because if he's better, then he'll be able to solve this crime and put Hannibal behind bars. And Hannibal reveals he has not given Jack Will's diagnosis about potential dementia because he wants to be sure and he wants to support his recovery. And I do think there's also this element of him like wanting to protect Will Graham. Hannibal is casually asking about Georgia Machin, which of course he is, because he wants to gauge how dangerous she is. He doesn't often commit crimes with witnesses, even if they can't see faces. So he has to determine how much of a threat she is. And then we cut back to Georgia sleeping in her little oxygen tank very peacefully, and she's woken up. We don't really see by what. Somebody has deposited a comb into her oxygen chamber. Now, this seems like a really kind gesture, and she's bored. So what is she gonna do other than brush her hair? But as we know, combs can cause static electricity, and she is in a tank of pure oxygen. She combusts. She dies in a horrible, painful fire with the comb still in her hair. It is a super scary scene. You can see that the death was slow and painful and just horrifying. And Hannibal really didn't take any chances. He saw her as a threat. And Hannibal's like, how can I kill her and make it seem like an accident? And the comb is honestly genius. Hopefully it melts in the fire and he doesn't have to deal with the science thruple figuring out that it's evidence. But we'll see. We'll see. Poor Will Graham. He just is going through so much. He goes back. He meets Jack with his little saline bag on the rack and sees that Georgia has been killed, and his heart is broken because she has been charred to an absolute crisp, and he had felt an ally in her, and all of these dead bodies just dropping around him is really taking a toll on him. We get this really interesting anecdote from Jimmy Price saying that this is not the first time this has happened. There was a kid in Italy who caught fire because his pajamas sparked like a static spark. And it's interesting because you know that Hannibal has a history in Italy. It's very much possible that he heard about this on the news or did his research prior and found this incident. And it's very likely that Hannibal was able to copycat it because of this prior incident. We find out she removed her grounding bracelet, which goes on her wrist and helps prevent static shock. And Jack is like, is it a suicide? And Will's like, no, she was not suicidal. I just spoke to her. Like, she wanted to live. She just didn't want to remember. And Jack's like, hold on. You spoke to this now dead person, this victim? Because now we have to like think about you being a suspect. He doesn't say that outright, but it's like, it's not looking good for you, Will. Just the building blocks of, should we trust him? Is he a murderer? Can we trust that he is not hallucinating? Cut to Abigail and Freddie Lowndes in the psychiatric center, and they are planning out Abigail's book. And Freddie so generously offers to make each chapter, the book headings of each chapter, articles she had written about each murder. So it incorporates Freddie's writing and is very self-serving, and you can just tell that in classic Freddie fashion, she's not really trying to tell Abigail's story. She's trying to make $1. Freddie wants to do each chapter about each victim, and Abigail can tell her story in those chapters and also give her feelings about what was in her mind during that time when these women went missing, which is interesting because Freddie definitely knows that Abigail was involved and she just can't gauge how much. So this interview structure is a way for her to find out more if she was involved in if Abigail was involved in her father's murders, which we know she was. And Freddie is thinking about naming the book The Last Victim. And Abigail's like, well, I wasn't his last victim anyway. And Freddie's like, excuse me? Elaborate on that, please. Who do you think was? And Abigail says Marissa. And I believe Marissa is the victim with the antlers. And Freddie's like, no, baby. That was the copycat. Freddie is very much has her finger on the pulse of these murders and this serial killer, and is paying attention more than everyone else thinks. And Abigail's like, I still blame my dad. And Freddie's like, oh, for Nick Boyle's death too, because she knows that Abigail killed him. And Abigail's like, Nick Boyle killed Marissa. Nick Boyle killed my friend. And Freddie's like, no. The copycat is not Nick Boyle. Abigail's really bad at looking innocent. Like, she always looks so guilty with her, like, doe-eyed stare. Freddie drops this heinous line. She's like, I've interviewed a lot of serial killers, babe. I can identify one when I see one. And Abigail plays it pretty cool. She's like, and what gives them away? Freddie says they have a very specific brand of hostility. And she sees it every time she looks at Will Graham. So she is on the right track, but she has the wrong guy, right? She is gunning for Will Graham, even though, like, it is Hannibal. But that is where Freddie is going at this point. Part of this book, I think, is to expose Will Graham. Cut to Will Graham sleeping in his bed with all his puppies. 2:13 in the morning, always the middle of the night for this dude. And he's sleeping. For once, he's sleeping, but is it a sound sleep? Ooh, look, he's awake. We see him wake up, and Georgia Machen in her sick form, where she has like gaunt eyes and is like very much like ill. Georgia Machen in this scene kind of reminds me of the main girl from The Exorcist with her makeup. I'm sure that was an inspiring factor, because you're not gonna tell me Brian Fuller's not a fan of The Exorcist. Just a cool little detail. But Will Graham wakes up, and we're assuming he's hallucinating, right? Because she's not sick like this. Georgia Machen is walking outside. She's kind of like she has like a stop motion effect on her. And Will's moving normally, and he follows her outside into the snow. This is a great scene. Will's hallucinations are always guiding him in the right direction. I mean, he definitely has this like insight, this empathy. He sees visions, he's able to put the pieces together, but he definitely has these like prophetic dreams. Georgia Machen says, see, and then she gets pierced by antlers and bursts into flames. And obviously this visual is telling Will that the Chesapeake Ripper killed her too, the copycat. So she bursts into flames and then turns into the stag, revealing itself as Death, as Hannibal, as the Ripper. He wakes up in his hospital bed, sweating. We find out that Will has checked himself out of the hospital, and he heads straight to Jack Crawford, and Jack's like, get your ass back in that bed. And he doesn't listen, and he's like, no. What happened to Georgia Machen was not an accident. She was killed. She was murdered. And Jack's like not listening. He's like, if you have a fever right now, if I stick a thermometer in you and you have a fever, like, get your ass back in the bed. And because Will is being so impatient, it's making him come off as erratic and not believable, even though he's right. This is like a very frustrating Will Graham arc that we get at the end of season 2, at the end of season 1 going into season 2, is that Hannibal has set him up quite perfectly for people to not believe him and for him not to be credible. So get ready to get really frustrated because Will Graham's about to be really right about everything, and Hannibal does everything in his power to discredit him and make him seem crazy. And Jack is already on board being like, you have a fever, get your ass back in the bed. I don't want to hear what you have to say. But Will doesn't give up. And Jack will always hear a good theory. So he's like, by who? Break it down. And Will's like, the guy that killed Dr. Sutcliffe. Whoever killed Dr. Sutcliffe also killed Georgia. And Jack doesn't believe it because he's like, her DNA was all over it. And Will's like, I'm not saying she wasn't there. I'm saying somebody else was there. Georgia says somebody else was there. And Jack is choosing to go the Abigail Hobbs route about this. He's like, no, she's guilty of a crime. She doesn't want to go to court. She's facing murder charges. The other person in the room was Dr. Sutcliffe. And she cut his face in half. So of course she couldn't identify it. It's not that simple. But Will doesn't have any evidence. He just has vibes and prophetic dreams. So. And Jack's like, you just want an explanation for why everything went wrong and ties together really neatly. You want that for yourself. And Will's like, no, she was murdered. He was like, what Will is like, her whole life, this girl was misunderstood because of her mental illness. I will not let her death be misunderstood. But it's not a great line. I mean, it is a great line, but like, it's not smart with Jack because now Jack's like, you have a personal vendetta, which clouds your vision. Hypocritical coming from Jack, but it's fine. And then we see like the vision changes, the vision blurs in the shot. You can hear Will's heartbeat in his ears. He is feeling, I don't know what's going on right now. Is he having a moment? But then suddenly we are at the morgue. Did he lose time? So they're in the morgue. The science husbands are like, we found plastic. And Will's like, it was a comb. It was a comb. Somebody gave her a comb. Again, he's connecting the dots, but people aren't trusting his opinion because they still think he's crazy. And the science couple agrees. The comb would cause a fire like that. And Will does this crazy thing where he pulls out Dr. Sutcliffe's body and everyone's like, whoa, this is like, that's crazy. What are you doing? So he's acting erratic. He is being like really demanding about Georgia being killed. And it's just not coming off as believable. It's coming off as a sick man kind of ranting. He's getting extra twitchy. It's just not working in his favor. And Will brings up the copycat copying Garrett Jacob Hobbs, and he's doing that again with Dr. Sutcliffe in Georgia. And instead of everyone being like, oh my God, you're right, Jack is like, hold on, we are connecting crimes that aren't even technically connected to each other. We're just combining past crimes. Like, are you really losing your mind? And he does not believe him. He just thinks that he's getting his wires crossed in his brain, connecting the dots that just don't belong there. And Jack, Jack counters him. He's like, you said Nicholas Boyle was the copycat. And he's like, well, obviously he's not, since the copycat's still going. Cut to Jack talking to Hannibal about Will and being like, he's previously connecting murders that were not connected. Do you think something's wrong with him? Like, what's going on? And asking Hannibal this is a terrible idea because Will is on the right track. Now Hannibal is going to do his damnedest to derail that track and discredit Will. And Jack's like, I don't know what to believe, but something's not right. What's his relationship with Abigail like? Is it close? And we know that it's too close. Is he trying to protect her? Is Hannibal trying to protect Will? Jack realizes that he's up against a couple things right now. Everyone's trying to protect each other from Jack. Why is that? He's catching on, but he's not getting the details right, And Hannibal really tries to be like, I don't know, Will's been acting normal to me. And Jack's like, I don't fucking think so, man. Like, you know him, like I know him, and we know that he's not been acting normal. So try again. And Hannibal is like, okay, well, he needs our support, whatever. Whether or not mental illness is involved, Will needs our support. Kind of diverts it a little bit, but Jack is catching on that Hannibal is covering for him. Hannibal says there are days that Will doesn't even understand his own thinking, which is a concept I love because Hannibal and Will have this journey throughout seasons 1, 2, and 3 where Will is kind of going through this transformation and Hannibal sees it first. So Hannibal acknowledges that Will doesn't really know what's going on in his thoughts half the time. He's still figuring out it for himself. And that's why Hannibal's trying to push him towards the dark side with Hannibal. Cut to opening Bedelia's door and revealing Jack Crawford has come to see Hannibal's therapist for a visit. I watched this last night and I still forgot that it's here today. I love this scene. I love when we get characters that don't often interact together. interacting. And because we have such a large ensemble cast in Hannibal, there's so much opportunity for it. So this is a great time because we get to see Jack interact with Bedelia, and we haven't seen her interact with anybody but Hannibal yet. I love that Jack shows up to Bedelia's house with no warrant, no court order, nothing. He's just gonna try to question her out of the blue, which is funny to me because Bedelia's not gonna crack. She is self-preserving more than anything else, and we'll see that throughout the entire series of this show, is that she is always looking out for herself, and she's painfully clever, and she loves to speak in riddles, and she's not ever going to tell you directly what you want to hear unless she's deliberate about it. So this is not an official inquiry. And he doesn't, Jack is like, I don't want to damage anybody's reputation. Jack is smart too. It's just like a bunch of master manipulators trying to solve crimes and hide crimes and commit them. I like Bedelia's kitchen because it kind of reminds me of Hannibal's living room or dining room. It has all these like beautiful plant structures in the back. It's much simpler, but she does have a very beautiful kitchen space, and there is greenery, and I do love the decoration and these kind of parallels between we get between Hannibal and his like friends and their homes. The reason Jack goes to talk to Bedelia is because he's like, I'm concerned about Hannibal's relationship with Will Graham. And you fucking know, she doesn't react, but in her mind, she's like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to talk about Will Graham with one more fucking person. I already talk about it with Hannibal enough. And now you're telling me Jack's coming to my house and I have to talk about it again. Like, yes, they're in love. He's obsessed with him. Like, let's move on. But she doesn't say any of those things. She's just like really taciturn, really like not giving anything because she's scared of Hannibal. She knows that he is capable of something dark, and she knows not to trust him, and she knows to protect herself from him. So she's just not going to give up information to Jack. And Jack does something really clever here. He's like, fine, we can't talk about Hannibal, we can talk about you. And at this moment, I think she realizes she is not fooling around with an idiot, and she needs to really keep her guard up. And Jack brings up the incident that we kind of keep vaguely hearing about, that Bedelia was attacked by a patient. And Jack's like, I read the report. Let's talk about that attack. And we find out Dr. Lecter gave a statement. It was a previous patient of Dr. Lecter that was referred to Bedelia. And also I think it's interesting too, because in the beginning, Jack's like, hey, I came to talk about a patient, Bedelia. And she's like, which one? We all know at this point that Bedelia has retired and Hannibal is her only patient. So she is already like playing chess here, but we find out the attack was from a former patient of Dr. Lecter that was referred to her. And because we know Hannibal the way that we do, he had to refer her for a reason. He had to refer this patient for a reason. I'm sure he had a hand in this like fucked up incident happening, but we have no details. We can't really discern what happened. We find out the patient almost killed Bedelia, but he swallowed his tongue before he could, which I'm going to be honest, I still don't know what that means. I know what the real story is to this patient. I don't want to spoil it, but in this moment, I'm like, swallowing your tongue is kind of a myth, I thought. But they go along with it. And Jack's like, okay, well, there was another attack recently that involved one of Dr. Lecter's patients in his office. So it seems to be happening again. There seems to be a pattern. Any input on that? And Bedelia calls him out. She's like, nicely done, putting me in a position to defend or call out Dr. Lecter. And guess what? I won't do it. She loves giving him non-answers. Oh, was it a complicated patient? And she's like, oh, complicated patients, are conducive to complicated relationships. It's normal. Just never revealing her cards and being difficult while being, giving him answers. She does, and I think it's crazy she gives this detail away, but she does tell Jack that she believes that Hannibal is treating Will as a friend more than a patient. I think it's crazy she gave this detail away because it tells Jack everything he needs to know. Hannibal is covering for Will, and this confirms it in his mind. And Jack's like, how far do you think he would go to treat a friend? Bedelia's like, he doesn't have many, so far. She is not wrong. And I love this. The dialogue is so good. Bedelia's like, look, I know he wants to help him. I know that. And Jack's like, well, I'm Will Graham's friend too. And she hits him with this brutal line that's like, he needs more friends. Like Hannibal. Eats him up. Like and she's so eloquent and bitchy about it. I love Bedelia. I love all the women in the show. They're so tired of these men very early on. Cut back to Jack at the morgue with the science boyfriends. And he's like, okay, Will thinks that the copycat killer and Garrett Jacob Hobbs knew each other, were connected. There is a thread there that he sees, and I'm not seeing it. And the science boyfriends are like, it's not really a hypothesis, or it's not really a theory. Like, there's no evidence And he's like, all right, Jack's like, all right, let's just talk it out. There's no evidence to connect the dots for me. And they're like, oh, do not real science. And he's like, just do this thought experiment with me for like 1 second. And they're kind of mocking Jack, being like, oh, with no evidence, we're going to connect the dots. And he's like, yeah, do it for me. Like, and then Jack is hilarious. He's like, where's Beverly? I need Beverly. I can't deal with you two. And they're like, oh, she's in court. And he's like, get her out of court. Because Jack is always prioritizing the wrong things. And Jack is like, all right, you two get all the camera footage from like toll cameras. I want to know every phone call he made, which we know Hannibal called him before they captured him. So like, this is an interesting step for Jack. So Jack's like, I need a full workup on Garrett Jacob Hobbs. Find out everywhere he was at every moment if you can. And we'll try to connect some dots here. Cut to this beautiful shot of Will and Abigail in her psychiatric hospital. We have the greens, we have the blues, we're like seeing through another set of patients to them talking in the corner. They're leaning into each other. They're confiding in each other. Abigail is like, you know, you talked about how killing people is one of the ugliest things in the world. And she's like, I finally get it. And Abigail and Will are talking about how they felt good when they killed somebody and they feel bad about it, but Abigail felt good when she killed Nick Boyle. She didn't do anything wrong. She felt powerful. And Will's like, you didn't do anything wrong. And she's like, did you do anything wrong when you killed my dad? So they're bonding over killing people that deserve to die, which, you know, of course, is a relative term, but they're bonding over the fact that killing people felt good. And we're kind of seeing this, why Hannibal is attracted to these two in a way that they understand murder the way that he does and killing, and that they make this perfect little murder family. Abigail reveals that she had wished she killed her dad for killing her mom and all those girls. Like, she's now wishing she had killed people. She's kind of yearning for it, even though it's bad. She was like, my life was not supposed to be like this. I was supposed to be a normal kid. And she is like, I can't escape my dad. It feels like he's still out there. And Will's like, baby, we can't escape him. Like, we're going to have to be dealing with him for a while. So it's this nice father-daughter moment where they're kind of bonding over their fucked up shit. And Will's like, I think I can catch him, but you have to help me. Which is fun because it's just another example of Abigail having to be a pawn in these grown people's plans and having to be like bait, or it's just like the same dynamics over and over and over again. No matter in her life, she's never winning. She is always being the bait. And then we cut to Bedelia and Hannibal having therapy, and immediately Bedelia spills. She's like, hey, an FBI agent came to my house. Hannibal's like, hold on, Jack Crawford came to your house? What did you tell him? And Bedelia's like, no, I played it smart. I gave him half-truths, and I didn't really lead him in any direction, which I'm not sure is true. But don't worry, babe. Like, I'm not going to tell on you because I'm scared of you. She's like, you know, Jack suspects that Will is protecting Abigail and you're protecting Will. And Hannibal's like, are you asking as my psychiatrist or as my friend? And she's like, as your colleague. Neither, babe. She refuses to be like, we're friends. But Delia is quite frank with him. And like I said, like she will be direct when she has to be. She's like, you need to cut it out with whatever the fuck you're doing with Will Graham and be professional. And Hannibal's like, Will needs me. Will needs me. And she's like, you've been unprofessional. And he's like, because I made a friend. And she clearly reads him with this fucking next line. She's like, you cannot function as an agent of friendship for a man who is disconnected from the concept. Crazy. So she has some of the best lines, like the meanest lines. And she's basically like, you don't know how to be a friend. So how can you say that this is for the name of friendship? And he's like, no, I can understand Will. I can. Even if you say I can, I can help him. And he's like, I don't want to tell him that my loyalty to him could fuck up his treatment. And Bedelia's like, that's fine. Pick another reason. Pick a lie. I don't care. Break up with Will Graham. And Hannibal just, he can't do it. He cannot do it. But she's like, don't worry, babe. I didn't tell him the truth. I kept out details. I am not about to get involved in this. We find out Bedelia's like, I didn't tell him who or why or who caused it. And she doesn't outright say Hannibal. But again, we're getting these vague details about this patient attack. And Hannibal was indeed involved. And Bedelia's funny because she's like, even the best psychiatrists have their flaws, and you're clearly finding that difficult to accept. And he's like, yep, I am. I don't like this at all. An interesting moment of honesty from Hannibal. And he's like, this is something else that he does. And he's like, if my influence and like relationship with Will gets too great, I will break the chain. I promise. A lie. He did the same thing with the encephalitis. He's like, oh, if it gets too much, I'll cut the cord at the right moment. And he doesn't. and he's doing it again. Cut to Will and Hannibal in therapy. Their chairs are really far apart. Will is leaning into him. Hannibal is leaning away. And Will's like, I feel clear. I am thinking so clearly now. But he looks really crazy. He's like sweating and twitching. We get this crazy man spreading of Will Graham. And Hannibal's like, there's evidence pointing to all these other people committing the murders. You're just going to ignore evidence? And Will's like, yeah, I am, because I think that's what the Ripper or the copycat would want me to think. These therapy sessions are good for Hannibal because he can really find out where Will's head is at and if he's really connecting the dots. And I think it is worrisome to Hannibal that Will is doing such a good job figuring him out, and he will get to like the right conclusion eventually, because Will's like, I don't think the copycat was trying to frame Georgia. He was trying to frame me. And we know that to be true. Hannibal is trying to frame Will. One has to stop and pause and be like, why is Hannibal trying to frame Will? And I think there are two fundamental reasons for this. One, if Hannibal frames Will, the heat will be off of him as the Ripper. Obviously, the most obvious reason, because Will's getting close to him. So if he delegitimizes him and makes him seem crazy, he can frame him and keep killing people. Reason number two, if Will goes to jail, he will know where he is at all hours of the day. He won't have to be his therapist anymore. He can just watch him like a bug in a jar. So crazy reasons. And Hannibal's like, do you believe this is personal? Bitch, it is. You love that man. And Will's like, it's got to be somebody involved, police, whatever. Somebody with access to the crimes and the files. And Will's like, there will always be evidence. This person who is involved is going to make it look like he's not guilty. Okay, Hannibal's like, all right, what's your plan then? And he's like, I'm going to take Abigail to the crime scene, the original crime scene in Minnesota, and see what happens there. And Hannibal's like, time out. Now you're sounding delusional, Will. You're sounding crazy. Again, making him not seem legitimate, making him seem crazy, setting it up so Jack and crew won't believe him. And Hannibal's really diabolical about it. He's like, I'm not going to let you pull Abigail into this delusion. Nice try. But Will's like, no, bitch, I am awake and this is real and you don't get to call me a liar. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. And you kind of see Hannibal panic a little. So we find out that the science husbands did more digging on Garrett Jacob Hobbs, and they were able to find two train tickets, with one of the girls they kidnapped on a train, proving that Abigail was on the train at the time of the picking of the victim and that she was indeed involved in her dad's murder spree. So they are getting more evidence proving that Abigail was involved in her dad's killings. And they also found out that Abigail Hobbs attended college orientations at every school where the strike hit. So again, proof that Abigail was with Garrett when they were picking these victims and claiming these girls. And Jack connects it. She was the bait. And Jack thinks that Abigail is the copycat. Abigail's the copycat, and she just started killing first to cover her tracks and then because she got a taste for it. Or she wants to impress somebody new. Let's see, who could that be? The Chesapeake Ripper? Cut to Abigail's psychiatric hospital. Freddie Lowndes is packing up, but Abigail is nowhere to be found. And Freddie's like, do you want to see Abigail or Will? And Jack's like, why would you say Will? And it's like, oh. And she's like, oh, you didn't know? I heard Will snuck her out. Oh, you didn't know that? Interesting, because he's her guardian. Why would he have to sneak her out? Freddie Lowndes stays being a bitch, but she's right. And Jack's like, fine, let's talk. Let's fucking talk. Small talk to start. How's the book coming? And Freddie's like, yeah, there's plot holes because she's obviously lying. And then Freddie outright asks, did Abigail kill Nick? Because she's paying attention. She's a pretty good reporter. Jack's like, why would you say that? And that's how you know he's interested, because he doesn't just dismiss it. He's like, state your case, give me the evidence. I love that Freddie's like, hey, I think this because Abigail is a smart girl who doesn't realize when other smart girls grow up, they can predict all the moves they're making, implying that Freddie was a lot like Abigail growing up and may have lied a lot. And it's just very interesting to the type of person Freddie is relating to Abigail Hobbs. What is Will Graham trying to hide? Jack then ambushes Hannibal in his office and is like, you need to be honest with me. Tell me what's going on between Abigail and Will. And he's like, I don't think he's acting on any of these crazy thoughts, but he has experienced periods of lost time. Again, making him seem not reliable, not legitimate, confused, hallucinations, making him an unreliable narrator. Hannibal is building those blocks to frame him. And he's like, he could appear perfectly normal and not remember a thing. And Hannibal basically tries to be like, yeah, these lost time periods, this like hallucinations, he is becoming Garrett Jacob Hobbs and committing these murders. So maybe he's the copycat in this psychosis state, thinking he's Garrett Jacob Hobbs killing these girls. And that's why these other murders are happening. That's why the copycat is happening. He's just setting it up so nicely to fuck this man over. Jack then tells Hannibal, oh, we have evidence to link Abigail to helping her father with her crimes. We don't know how much, and we don't know if Will knows. And you can see Hannibal like having to think on his feet and kind of figure out this situation now that Jack is catching up. This is how you know Hannibal's thinking 10 steps ahead, because he's like, oh, there's something you should hear. And he pulls out one that he's been recording Will's sessions, which I'm not sure Will is aware of. And it's a recording of Will being like, how did you feel seeing Marissa in the antler room? That was the last victim. And Will's like, I felt guilty. I felt like I had killed her. And they are like, and Hannibal's like, see, he obviously goes into this this like psychotic state and thinks he's Garrett Jacob Hobbs and is killing people. And like, this is why he feels guilt in his subconscious. And Jack's like, we know he was with Georgia. We know he was with Dr. Sutcliffe. We know he was with Melissa. Like, is Will the killer? And Hannibal plays this so bewildered, and he plays it so well. There's no chance that Jack would ever survive Hannibal. Like, he's just too smart. Hannibal's like really broken up about this. They're saying he has this dissociative personality that he falls into, and he thinks he's Garrett Jacob Hobbs. He felt that he was becoming Garrett Jacob Hobbs. Hannibal tees it right up, and Jack just falls right for it. I love this moment because Jack storms out, and then Hannibal's mask immediately falls off. Like, he's no longer worried. He's thinking, you see it on his face. It's actually crazy. Like, he doesn't even wait a second for Jack to leave. And he's like, just the sadness dissipates on his face. It's just so beautifully done. We still see that Will is on a plane with Abigail. He has abducted her, and they are going to Minnesota to go to the original crime scene, the cabin. And Abigail's like, babe, you look sick. You shouldn't have checked yourself out of the hospital. And Will's like, I am fine. But he doesn't look fine. And Abigail's like, it was going to be my mom's birthday last week, and we were going to go on this hike to celebrate. And Will's like, I can take you instead. I'm your new daddy now. And she's like, babe, I think that would just make me sad, but thanks. Like, he's trying so hard, and it's so sad. She was like, some places are stained now, and so are some people, like myself. Abigail's interesting because she does hold a lot of secrets, but she also holds a lot of fear. We see them pull up to the cabin, and her face, she is just so scared. And Casey Roll plays this character really raw, which I appreciate. I think Abigail's really annoying. That is just a personal preference. I think she's acted beautifully. I love what the character represents, this kind of murder family, but I think because she's such a young girl, she annoys the shit out of me. But she does play this so scared and so sad. There is this duality to Abigail Hobbs where she, like, yes, genuinely enjoys killing, but also feels the same struggle that Will does. Will is very obviously sweating. He's like very obviously sick. And Abigail's like, did you really think you knew my father? Because like you didn't. And Will's like, I felt like I understood him. And Abigail's like, hey, do you ever hunt? And he's like, I fish. And she's like, hey, that's the same thing. And it is, one you stalk and one you lure. And Will connects the dots and is like, did you hunt or did you fish? Did you hunt the victims or fish? He connects the dots that Abigail was involved in her dad's crimes and that she was the lure. They're both fishermen. And I do love that Will fishes because it is a really great connection between like Hannibal's hunting and killing. Like, Will does hunt. They all have that in common. You know, Abigail like helped lure these victims, and she also hunted deer, and Will fishes, and Hannibal hunts people. Cute little murder family. And then Abigail's like, wait a minute, did Hannibal tell you that I was involved? And Will's like, no, bitch, I connected the dots. You're telling me Hannibal knew and didn't tell me? And Will starts to kind of hyperventilate. He's like really upset. He picks up Abigail and throws her against the wall. He is losing his mind. And then we see that was a hallucination. And Abigail's like, babe, you're sick. We got to get you out of here. You're sick. And he's like, I'm fine. And Will is dealing with the reckoning of Abigail killing Nick Boyle and luring all of those girls. And then he thinks that Abigail is the copycat for a second. And Abigail's like, I'm sorry, what about you? Do you think maybe it was you? And Will is not sure that it's him. And then Will is breathing rapidly, and we lose time again because, again, the fever was treated, but the encephalitis was not. Cut to Will waking up on a plane, completely empty. The stewardess is like, you have to get off. You're the last person here. Like, what are you doing? And Abigail is nowhere to be found. So she clearly, did he kill her? Did she escape? Was she on the plane with him? Like, what is happening? We find out he's back in Virginia. Abigail nowhere to be found. But then we cut to Abigail going to her old house, and she gets the key to her old house in Minnesota, walks in, and lo and behold, who is there? Hannibal. Because he can see 10 steps ahead. He figured that Abigail might visit the house. And he was right. And Abigail runs to Hannibal and embraces him in a fatherly hug and is so happy to see him. And he was like, I was so worried about you. Will said he was taking you to Minnesota. Where is Will? And Abigail's like, I left him at the cabin. He was kind of losing his mind and I didn't feel safe with him. And she's like, he knows everything. He knows that I killed Nick Boyle. He knows that I helped my dad. And Abigail feels kind of cornered. She's like, I can't run. They'll catch me. You can't protect me. And Abigail's like, did he kill Marissa? Did he kill my friend? And Hannibal's reveal, he's like, they'll believe he did. They'll believe he killed the others too. And then she connects the dots. She's like, who did it then? She's like, Will said whoever called that house that morning, my house that morning, was the copycat. And she connects the dots that Hannibal is the copycat. She's like, why did you really call? And he's like, to warn your dad. And I love this Hannibal line because she's like, why? And he's like, I just wanted to see what would happen. For the plot, baby. Whatever, like Hannibal's just playing with his human Sims. For the plot. I was curious what would happen when I killed Marissa and the others. I was curious what you would do. And she's like, you wanted me to kill Nick Boyle. And he's like, I hoped. And you did it. Hannibal's really calm and really scary in this moment. Abigail's kind of unraveling. And Hannibal's like, I wanted to see if you were like your dad. And it's like, he was testing her. Could she be into this fold? Could she be into this murder family? And he's like, you killing Nick Boyle is way more important than his little pathetic life. Like, now you see what you are. I'm helping you become. And she's like, how many people have you killed? And he's like, many more than your father. I love that we don't get a real exact number because there's just like a lot to play with there. But a lot of people, I'm sure he's killed so many people. And she's like, are you going to kill me? And he's just like, I'm so sorry, Abigail. I remember the first time I watched this, he's like, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you in this life. I remember being like, no. He's like caressing her cheek. It's like very loving, but he's like, I'm so sorry. And you just assume that he's going to kill her and the episode cuts. I love this episode. I love them all, but this is a great one because you think you lose Abigail Hobbs. Everything kind of is coming together, right? Like Will is perfectly set up to be framed. He is losing his mind. He can be seen as unreliable. He can be seen as someone who is in this disassociative state, becoming Garrett Jacob Hobbs and killing. And like, we're not sure as an audience member is like, is that happening? It could also be happening. So we know that Hannibal has done these killings. We don't know what kind of headspace Will is in. He's an unreliable narrator. We don't know what happened to Abigail Hobbs, and we are approaching the finale. And it's like, are we going to get more answers, or is everything just going to be more confusing for season 2? So really excited to delve into that. We have the finale next time. I cannot wait. I also wanted to show you guys this. I forgot to show you in the beginning, but look what I bought. So cute. Don't ask me how much I paid for it. Isn't it cute? Yeah, so do me a favor, follow me everywhere. I'm Quantifiably Bitchy without the I. My name is Raquella, and I had a great time today, and I will see you next time. Bye!